one word that's coming to mind of why this is so valuable is scale. How can you scale a company without having a process? Right? I mean, if you're looking for your company to actually grow, process almost comes off as a swear word, but there's got to be this organization synchronization that goes on where people know how to do things. That's the only way you're going to go to the next level.
So most entrepreneurs, or many entrepreneurs that are out there, are really happy in the very beginning stages of a business. And that's because they are inventing everything about the business.
Right, it's fun, creative.
It's fun, it's creative, they're doing all those sorts of things. At some point, you have to make a significant jump. And the difference between a mature business and an immature business, I really believe, is the ability to add the process piece and be comfortable with that. From Goalpost Studios in downtown East Lansing, Michigan.
Hello and welcome to the Earn More, Keep More show,
where it's our job to give you tips, tricks, and strategies to earn more and keep more. I'm Dave McAndrews, and I believe that we should focus our marketing on messages that are all about our clients so that we can connect with them in a way that they can understand.
And I'm Matt Love, and I believe in being efficient with our companies so that we are able to keep more of what we make.
Me up beautifully, and that's why I stay plugged in and I always contribute to my community.
Welcome to the Earn More, Keep More show. We're back again today. And Matt, what is the one thing that you say just about every episode about process?
Every episode I like to say this. When I can turn a problem into a process, the problem goes away.
And you know what I did? Just because you say that just about every time?
Yeah.
I met somebody a couple months ago, and he is Mr. Process.
You're kidding.
Mr. Process, Bernie Adams. And Bernie, it's been really interesting getting to know you personally. And basically, I've been able to share with you some of the processes or lack thereof of some of my clients and some of the processes and lack thereof of my own company. And just the way that you look at different processes and how to structure process was extremely interesting to me. And I really believe that what you say, Matt, is correct in that when you're able to convert that problem into a process, it is no longer a problem. It is just simply part of the business operation.
It's gone.
And now you can, and coincidentally, this comes from a place of great need.
Yeah.
Because essentially my team for the last 6 months has been telling me, Dave, you need better processes or you're going to kill us all.
I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of businesses out there that could do.
It is absolutely rampant.
Yeah,
and because it is rampant, I want to be just giving of myself to show the pain that is within my company. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to connect with that and show how we can really take those problems, convert into process. So Bernie, without further ado, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you really started with your company? And your company is Process Pro.
Correct.
And you can find that on processpro.net. So Process Pro was really created to start solving some of these problems for people.
You got it. So my wife, I'm going to back up really quickly. My wife will tell you that the process brain that is in my head is not just in business, it's also at home. It's a sickness that I have. I tell people all the time, you see the opportunities. So about 20 years ago, I obtained a Six Sigma black belt. So for those who aren't familiar with Six Sigma at all, Six Sigma and Lean, they're methods to be able to look at any process, any problem that's out there to determine what's the root cause. And it's not a gut feel. It's not a guess. It's not taking best practice and applying it. It's truly looking at your process in a meaningful way, step by step, and determining what's causing that negative aspect that we're trying to, to weed out of our business, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't have to be the business. It can be how you do dishes at home, which was coincidentally my very first project I've ever done when I was taking this training 20 years ago, was how to improve the dish, because it was one thing that frustrated me. So as an aside.
Yeah.
So for 20 years, I've been doing this black belt work in a number of different companies, large and small companies. And it came about 3 years ago, somewhere in there, it became pretty evident that a lot of companies, process is a boring word. It's something that people don't think about. As an
it's
entrepreneur,
kind of thought of as a task, really. People think of it as like a chore.
Sure, and at arm's length. We know that we have these things to do, right? And it's my process. But in reality, if we don't understand that well, there's something that in the Six Sigma world is one of the most dangerous things. It's called variation pops in. When variation comes in, the data that you have for your process, for your business, is junk. It's the average of all the things that are going on. If you don't have consistency and reliability in your process, because people have their own ways of doing it, their own styles, their own path, right? Their own comfort levels, then you have variation within your process, whatever that process is. And Process Pro, why I started the company, what we do is we don't change your business. We don't change how you do something. We want to make sure that there's no variation, so that whatever it is that you do, whatever your widget is, whatever the thing is that's driving you crazy, it could be how you answer your phone. It could be how you inspect the product. It could be how you package it. It doesn't matter what it is. We really facilitate and talk about that process in a meaningful way so that it can be executed in a very consistent manner every single time. Now, one of my favorite things to say is think about the process that you have in your mind, right? Something that you want to fix. If you adopt the best process in the world, right? So I have a lot of experience in healthcare, right? So if you take what Johns Hopkins does, and they do it really well, and you adopt it to your healthcare setting, and you don't have a good process, and people are allowed to do it their own way, if you have a lot of variation, right? If you ask your nurses or ask your staff, whatever, here's what you're going to do, and then you stand back and you let them do it without boundaries, without some sort of guideline, right? They're going to do their own thing. They're going to try their best, and they're going to try to do exactly what they feel is necessary for that meaningful point in time. But you're going to have variation within the process. So every patient's experience is going to be different. If you collect data, which in healthcare around the world, we're collecting more data, more and more and more, right? The data
they don't necessarily know what to do with the data, but they're collecting.
This is why. This is why, because it's a culmination of all of the different variation that's out there. And when people look at this and say, okay, how's our process running? The answer should be, I have no idea, because there's so much variation. The first step is always make sure you standardize, and that's an ugly word, right? Standardize this process so that it's followed the same way to make the same output every time. So if you take Johns Hopkins, you adopt it, and then you say, okay, go to it. If there's variation, you don't have a process at all. You have junk in, junk out, even though I've adopted it from one of the best hospitals in the world, right?
Sure.
Now, take the opposite. Take a practice that's from a junkie hospital, something else, and you adopt it. It might not be the best process in the world, but if you can get people in the same frame of mind where they're performing that process in the same way, you might not have the best outcome yet, but every one of your staff will be able to identify where the problems lie, because they're all doing it the same way. Your staff are going to now have that engagement. They're going to say, whenever I do these 3 steps, it takes longer than I expect. It costs more money. It's more frustration. The customers always complain about that. So instead, let's try it a different way. This is where the scientific method falls in. This is where you take that, you engage your staff and really say, okay, what do we do differently? Now, engage that new process in the same way every time so you get a reliable outcome. And you repeat this. This is a cycle. You repeat this. Now you're increasing the bar over and over and over again. This is how true improvement happens.
So you gave the example of healthcare.
Yeah.
And in healthcare, inevitably, you are going to be running into trying to manage doctors.
Yes.
And doctors are a beautiful subset of the entrepreneurial class in that they are highly educated, highly opinionated, and highly compensated. And when you have those 3 things come together, generally things like process feel like you are telling me how to do my job.
Yes, don't treat me like a robot.
And for folks who are highly opinionated, highly compensated, and highly educated, that can be a very difficult thing to swallow. And I think this applies to a lot of entrepreneurs as well, because entrepreneurs are in the positions that they are in because they generally are going against the grain. They're willing to go and step and do things that other people aren't. And because that, I know in my own life, whenever someone says, okay, do this process, I think, no thanks. I'd rather not do the process. How can I shortcut the process, because my brain is set to shortcut every process so that it is the least number of steps possible. So how do you manage, and whether it's with doctors or with entrepreneurs, how do you manage that type of mindset in order to get them to understand that the process is in their benefit rather than a restriction or something that might feel very restrictive to them?
Absolutely. And it happens everywhere. It really happens everywhere. There's an art form with almost every job, with every position that we have, right? You're skilled to do something, and you don't want constraints on you to how to do it, right? And I always talk about an art form, and that's okay. And we'll go back to the physician piece. So my wife is a pediatrician. She's a physician. Sometimes we butt heads, right? My brain is very processed, and she has been traditionally very much hey, you can't put us in with a constraint, because you never know that patient that comes in might be a different patient than anyone that we've ever seen before. Every patient's different. I have to look in their eyes. I have to feel them. I have to touch them. I have to, the lab results are going to be different every time. And so I need the flexibility. You can't make me into a robot and say you have to treat everybody the same way. And in some aspects, she's right. But there's many other aspects. And what people don't understand is outside of this artistic world, everyone has process. Physicians have 85, 90% of their job is process. They don't think about it. Those are the things that frustrate them the most. So my wife came home one day, and we're having this conversation about work. She's telling me about the frustrations that she's having, and there's delays with getting procedures done, and the lab results are taking too long, and the nurses are busy doing 5 other things, and the instruments that they get aren't timely, or they're not just like she needs them. And so she's frustrated because it takes time. I have to go chart and read because everyone's not charting the same way, and I have to go find the nurse because she's supposed to be here, but I can't find her because she's busy doing other things, and the instruments aren't exactly right, so I have to go figure out what that is. And she's like, I just want more time with my patient. That's all I want. Healthcare is going the opposite direction. You hear this all the time in healthcare.
Yeah, totally.
We don't have enough time with our patient. They want more and more and more. And yet, I don't like my EMR system. I don't like, this and that and the other thing. And all of a sudden she stops and she looks at me, and I saw the light bulb go off. And she says, that's all process, isn't it? Exactly it. That's exactly it.
I'm not the kind of guy to say I told you so, but if I was.
I did, right. We have a wonderful relationship. There's no I told you so, right? So what was important is she got it, and then she started backing up and saying, if there's a good process where all the nurses know at 1:30 I'm going to do this procedure, because I can schedule these things on a daily basis, they can plan out their day to be able to do that too. Yes. And if the instruments were always in the same spot, and if the people who put the instruments together were to put them in the same order, I wouldn't have to spend time looking. Yes. And if the vitals were always in the EMR system in the same spot in the same way, right, then I would know exactly where to look and not spend 5 minutes looking for it. Yes. And she went down her list. Process. And in the end, I would get 30 more minutes because I'm spending all this time, frustration time, looking for
and
things.
She gets what she wants.
Right. And she gets
what she wants, yep. Which was more time with the patient.
Yes.
And more time with the patient means that she is doing the job the way that she wants to do the job.
Why she went into medicine in the first place.
Right.
And that's across the board. That's what we're seeing. People don't want to be put in boxes, but the discipline of knowing what you're expected to do, the discipline of knowing, hey, if we do these things this way, gives you more time for that art form, more time to, and here's the great part, to improve the process, right? We talked about that beforehand. It gives you more free time. Now,
but if you have 15 people trying to improve it at the same time, that creates chaos.
Well, it depends. If they're trying to fix 15 different things,
right? Because
their process is different than your process. Right. We could be doing the same thing, but our process is different. You're going to try to fix something that works for me,
right?
And I'm not going to like that too much. I'm going to be in a silo. Right? But if we were having the same process, most likely you and I would know exactly to have the same issue, so we could work together. So we wouldn't be working on 15 different things. We'd be working on the same thing together. Now you just multiplied your execution for process improvement, for figuring this out. I love using McDonald's as an example, right? McDonald's makes a Big Mac. Why, when you go to McDonald's, if we just came back from Germany last year, I went to McDonald's just to prove a point. A Big Mac, guess what it tasted like in Germany?
Big Mac.
A Big Mac, exactly. No matter where you go in the country, why?
Or the world.
Or the world, that's exactly it. Why? It's not because they have the smartest 16-year-olds that work there, right? They have average people that work there. It's because they have a process. They don't have the best quality ingredients, right? They have a process that they adhere to on a very religious basis, right? They make sure that it's structured every time so that your Big Mac is a Big Mac no matter where you go, because the customer expects that. The minute you go outside of that and the customer is expecting one thing, how many times do you go to a restaurant and say, man, I love that burger, I'm going to go back there again? And it's just not the same all the time, right? The food industry, this happens all the time. Why? It's because they have variation in the process.
You don't know what you don't know.
You know, as you talk about this and you mentioned the physician world, they're also controlled by a lot of constraint that's out of their control. But in the entrepreneurship and business owner world, one word that's coming to mind of why this is so valuable is scale. How can you scale a company without having a process, right? I mean, if you're looking for your company to actually grow, and we struggle with hiring employees and giving tasks to people, if they're all doing different tasks and there's no organized, you know, the process almost comes off as a swear word, but there's got to be this synchronization that goes on where people know how to do things. That's the only way you're going to go to the next level.
So most entrepreneurs, or many entrepreneurs that are out there, are really happy in the very beginning stages of a business. And that's because they are inventing everything about the business.
Right, it's fun, creative.
It's fun, it's creative, they're doing all those sorts of things. And a lot of entrepreneurs start to feel a lot of pressure and start to feel a lot of tension with themselves and with their business when they get to the point where, and I have seen this happen over and over again, and for some businesses, it's at 5 million. At some businesses, it's at 10 million. Some businesses, it's 20. But at some point, you have to make a significant jump that takes you from what is, and small business still goes up pretty far from there, but kind of a mature business. And the difference between a mature business and an immature business, I really believe is what we're talking about, the ability to add the process piece and be comfortable with that. And a lot of the entrepreneurs are very uncomfortable, and they would rather have it where they can continue to scribble on the walls with crayon instead of having
because it might work for them too, right? They might not want to grow, but if they want to stay there, it works.
And a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they are successful because of lack of process. And now when this is introduced, when they're having to formalize, which is absolutely 100% necessary to scale. Now they feel constrained, and a lot of folks believe, and we've talked about the growth trap and that idea before. A lot of folks wish that they could go back to the good old days when they were scraping by, just making it up as they go along, because that's where they feel comfortable. That's what they enjoyed. They enjoyed that period of their life. So when you're dealing with the entrepreneurs, and we already we hit a little bit on it with your wife, and the fact that you got her what she wanted, which was the ability to have more time. What are some of the things that maybe are those light bulbs for the entrepreneurial mindset to help them move from the stage where they are really looking at this almost adversarially? For that type of mentality, that type of mind, how do we get them to understand that it's really in your best interest to capture, codify, process so that you can continue to scale?
I think a lot of it goes back to what all of us as entrepreneurs feel, and that is we want to get an end result, right? We know where we want to get. We're good at vision. We're good at having a concept, and sometimes when it's just me or a few people, right, bringing that to fruition. But there comes a point where we have to grow and get somewhere that we're not comfortable getting. The how is process. A lot of times, I talk about cloning a lot, right? You want to clone your high performer. You want to clone yourself. It'd be a lot easier if instead of handing this off, I could just do it myself, but I can't because I'm so busy. So I'm just going to magically clone myself and there'll be another me out there running around, right? What we have to do is clone your process. So what was it that made you successful in growing your apple pie business, right? What made you sell your first 100 pies, 1,000 pies, whatever it happens to be? What was your sales process? Well, I never thought about it that way. We don't think about it in those steps. We go out because I'm a people person, because I make great pies, and I have a good relationship with people, and all of a sudden it worked. Well, when you break it down and think about the individual components, that's what process really is. So it's a fundamental concept, but it's not one that we think about often. So it takes facilitation. It takes, a lot of thought and facilitation to talk about where are you trying to go? How did you get there before, in some cases, right? And then how do you ensure, if you're talking scaling or anything else, that you're going to get that consistent and reliable output that you're looking for each time? It's baby steps, because it's truly a new concept for a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs who have a great idea for a business and grow it to a certain point, but can't push it.
It's a good point too, because the process is the repeatable part. Now, you can't repeat Matt Love. Right? You can't repeat our unique abilities. I'm going to give your company a shout out, though. The Goalpost Group helped me with my marketing. I was making my own website. I was doing all my own stuff. Why? Because I can. Does that mean I should? No, totally different. Now I can offload that stuff, so the process, the problem that I had was time. How do I fix that? Well, let me unload some of my tasks to a professional group whose job is just to make me look really good, or get my message out there, or get social media, going, that whole thing, websites, all that, videos, give that to a team. Now they can do it. That's scalable. We could do that interaction all day long, and it just freed up my time and allowed me then to do what I was really good at, my own stuff.
And I really think that the process gives you time, because we talk a lot about time being your
number one asset.
Absolutely. So if time is your number one asset, then adapting processes in your business in a consistent manner so that your business can scale, and hopefully at some point scale outside of you, because that's really the holy grail for most entrepreneurs that most people never get, is the fact that they're able to show up in a room and do their thing, and they're really good at it, but they're not able to scale themselves because they can't duplicate. They can't they can't be Michael Keaton in multiplicity.
Right.
You have to be able to multiply yourself, and the only way to multiply yourself is to create quality processes that others can follow.
Which would be Michael Keaton in that McDonald's movie. I forget the name of the title of it. So
The Founder.
The Founder, it's exactly
Yes.
it. The first half of that is one of my favorite movies of all time, because they talk process.
Right.
And he really nails it. They nail it really well in that movie.
He did. They had it down to the pennies of the fries and how many seconds the fries
You
are supposed
got
to
it.
be in. And,
Yeah.
why
And
they
he
didn't
was
wanna have a
able to
water
completely
base.
steal that from the McDonald's brothers, and then create an
Which
empire.
brings us to our
out of
next
it.
episode next week, when we have the attorneys on. But so to that point now, so what would your company with a Process Pro, how do you help businesses design that swear word process into their company? I mean, because to me, it's kind of a, how do you do that? I don't know how that's going to be done.
So we're all about execution. It's really about process execution. So what we do, the part I love about our business is we're not coming in and saying, this is how you should do it. This is how you should run your business. And a lot of people have a lot of experiences and they can do that. We're staying out of that realm, and that's great for people who know how to improve businesses. We're here to let you help you execute your process. So the first thing we do is say, what do you want to work on? What are your struggles, right? What's frustrating with you? It can be one single thing. It can be, my sales process. It can be how we answer the phone. It could be, I don't get enough time. Well, what do you have enough time? And so we go into facilitation. We're experts at facilitating this conversation. And it starts with, tell me how it works right now. And people will say, okay, I do A, B, C, and D, right? That's how I do my job. Then we start asking what I call our dumb questions. We really start digging in. I start asking about that process you just told me. You said you do these 4 steps. Does it happen that way every time? What happens if somebody's sick on that day? What happens if a customer calls instead of emails, right? Whatever it happens to be. And we start pulling this apart and making people think about the variation that's truly inherent within their system. It's that variation that we're looking for. So within a simple, and we end up with what we're calling a smart map, right? And that is a process map that shows you how it's supposed to be done. But from the beginning to the ending point, there's a lot of facilitation, a lot of pulling out information where the light bulbs go off in the customer's brain, because they're realizing, entrepreneurs, leaders, whomever is engaged in this, they're realizing there's so much more to this process of how we answer a phone than I ever thought about before.
Yeah.
You know, the little things mean the biggest difference when it comes to consistency. And so as we're going and facilitating this conversation, and we're showing this map getting bigger and uglier and messier, they're seeing why they're frustrated, why they don't have enough time, why they're not getting the same result every time, even for a simple process, right? Packaging a box and shipping it. If you do it 20 different ways, you're going to get 20 different results or more that's out there.
So one of the things that we really like to focus on here at the show is by giving someone a step that they can take. Mm-hmm. And process seems like, you know, at least in the conversations, can feel like a never-ending bottomless hole.
Sure.
that you can fall into.
Yeah.
So I can go out and process map everything about my business and absolutely stop my business from doing anything else but processing. What are one or two or three particular processes that an entrepreneur could put into their business that could significantly change the trajectory of it in the short term?
Sure. I think the biggest one that I'm seeing right now, the lowest hanging fruit, is with handoffs. So we have silos, we have businesses that have lots of different moving parts. Handoffs are difficult for a lot of different places. There are delays, there's costs associated with this. A lot of things fall through the cracks, right? There's many instances where handoffs aren't as smooth as they need to be. So an entrepreneur, just to think about where those joints are, where those handoffs are between point A and point B, if it's between two departments, between two buildings, between two people, right? Anytime there's a handoff, often there's an opportunity for a better process, because usually those people don't talk, they don't work on a seamless way to make it happen. So,
or they work very differently.
Absolutely, right. They might work great for me.
So this is kind of exactly. We started talking about how you might be able to help a few of the clients we have at Goalpost. Mm. And the very first thing that came to mind was I have a couple of principals that work on in a practice together. One of them is high touch sales side, and the other one is technical and takes the customer from the high touch sales side and then hands them over to the technical side. And all of the sudden, all of the warm and fuzzy high touch that the customer had felt before, that's now out the window.
Yeah.
And now we're going through kind of a mechanical process, and the customer feels a significant amount of incongruence within the same company. So the very first thing that I thought of was how can setting a process into this keep the culture or the feel of the culture for the client consistent? Because ultimately, if they're being sold by someone who is high touch and is relational in that way, if they don't feel that same way once the sale is made, they're going to have a lot of problem down the road. So that idea of handing off to different parts of the organization, it's a massive opportunity, I think.
And some people just have the personality of being a very customer-driven person, right? They have that charisma about them. And so to think about them handing their piece of it off to somebody else that might not. Process doesn't eliminate who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take away. You're not going to clone that person. You're not going to necessarily, but you can devise and understand the steps of what makes a high charismatic person who's really good at sales, what makes them successful. It might be they smile all the time. That might be part of the process, right? There are companies who talk about that. We want you to smile when the person comes in. That's important. Did I hit home?
Be happy.
Right, but you can be happy in your own way.
Sure.
You greet the customers at this point. You can greet them in a number of different ways. We're not saying to be a robot and like the Terminator and say, well, welcome to my store, right? We're saying greet them when they come in, because we know, or we have a hunch that if we do it this every single time, they're going to feel welcomed wherever they go. And so what makes it successful? What's that process? Sometimes you have to sit down and think about yourself. Well, what is my process? I just know I'm good at it. I don't know what my process is. That's where the facilitation really needs to come in. So you determine what are the successful points for good customer satisfaction, and then how do you replicate them?
This sounds really cool, but how do you understand, or how can you quantify the results at the end of the day? Obviously, clients are going to be happy because they can put these processes in place that I think are blindingly obvious that they needed help with. But how can you quantify that result?
It depends on where they're coming from in the first place, right? Where the problem lies, what they're looking for. So the Six Sigma world always starts with quantifiable, right? What's the data? Is it accurate data? Is it measurable? All this stuff. But the first thing you have to do is saying, what are we trying to fix? That packaging solution. Well, because there's too many delays going on, right? Yeah. So is your data showing that there's delays out there? If not, if you want anything quantifiable, you have to measure accurately, right? But then once your process is streamlined, you're going to get the same result. So your data will always be more accurate. And then you're going to see, because it's being consistent, that improvement is always the direction it's going to go. You're going to get a good baseline, because if you have variation, you haven't had a good baseline.
Here's the takeaway.
I think that's a big word for me. That's a big takeaway for this conversation, is the word variation. Because that really is the problem.
Absolutely.
Variation. I mean, it's so, when you first said it, I thought, yeah, variation, that's the problem. But then the more we're talking about it, it's like, no, that is like the biggest part of the mistake, is having it done different ways. It's not repeatable. It's not scalable. You can't teach it.
I say this often, and I say this in my line of work all over the place. Variation is truly, and I believe this, the root of all that's evil in process, in business. It really, really is. The bad part is it's also the spice of life. We love variation. We love going into our jobs and the excitement, and every day is a new day. That's the challenging. That's what we love. We love the stories that we get to tell our family when we go home at the end of the day. Hey, guess what happened today, right? But you don't get the best end results with that. That's why you really have to think about eliminating process variation and really giving a big warm hug to the normal variation that comes in with every new customer that comes in.
I really believe that going back to the idea of you need process in order to scale, you need process in order to duplicate yourself, and process equals time. So you just mentioned process, getting rid of variation, but if as an entrepreneur, so if I'm the business owner, having no variation in my process, in solid processes, actually gives me the ability to have more variation in my life in terms of what I now have time to do.
Right, sure.
And ultimately, that's what I want, is to be able to do what I want to do. Yeah. And if my team is able to execute a process in a consistent manner where we have consistent quality, and we're having, you have to start out with good quality, but we have good consistent quality, that allows me to do other things. And I think that is a huge takeaway for the folks out there, is really get process into your business and find those variations and create the opportunity to be the best version of that process it can be, because then you can do what you want to do.
And if they want to learn more about your company, where can they go to find out?
ProcessPro.net.
ProcessPro.net to learn more about Bernie's company and how he helps businesses set up processes so that they can earn more money.
And keep more. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Bernie,
guys.
thanks for being here.
This is great.
Drop the mic.
I'm Matt Love.
And I'm Dave McAndrews,
And we are downtown New York City today on a beautiful sunny day.
bringing you the latest in how to earn more and keep more.
And if you're a business owner like us, you're interested in growing your business. There's only two ways to make that happen. Either you increase your sales or you reduce the cost that you had to incur to make those sales.
Click below or go to earnmorekeepmore.show.
This has been a Goalpost production.
That's it for us. We are your hosts, Dave McAndrews and Matt Love. Our executive producer and creative guru is Jennifer McKinstry. Our social media director is Mark Farnes. And a very special thank you to Lansing's own Jose Moore for providing the music.
Thanks for listening.